Just to say thank you. I'd also like to thank the NLGF for asking me to speak. Basically what I do, I work in Dublin City Council, I work in the Culture, Recreation and Amenity Department for the last 11 years. Our role would be on the ground in disadvantaged drugs task force areas. My main first area that I worked in was Outing Gardens. Now, when I was obviously starting in the council, for me, when I stood in Outing Gardens, I obviously became a bit overwhelmed. You know, I just couldn't understand how somebody could grow up in these areas. And it dawned on me that, you know, this is what I was really passionate about. I wanted to get some programs out there for the kids to work with the communities. And also what dawned on me was obviously, you know, how somebody in these areas could feel that they are socially excluded due to education and lack of income, or, you know, if they are haven't got enough money to maybe send their kids into the city to take part in different programs. It also dawned on me as a gay woman that how would I feel growing up here? You know, how would that feel? So a lot of our work is on the ground. We have sports development officers, sports and recreation officers, and we get funding from the council, the Irish Sports Council, and different agencies pool together to make sure that there is programs for young people and disadvantaged groups within these areas. One of my main areas that I've worked in was Ballybough, and there's going to be a short video that I'm going to show on how we pooled together all the different agencies, got the funding, and got a community youth and sports centre built within that area. Outreach work and social inclusion. For the different programs that we would run, specifically target you know, young people. We also have programs for older people. You know, we have a men's health project which would work with men who would be, you know, middle-aged, unemployed. You know, they may not have had a great education. So what we do is we you know, work with different agencies to provide the service, like they learn how to cook, and they learn how to look after themselves. There's, you know, different, Pfizer would be involved, so we kind of educate them about their health issues as well. So again, while they're all based within this centre and this area, these are programs that I think are key to help people feel included in society. And sometimes, just sometimes, I feel that maybe the LGBT community need to maybe come forward a bit more to the agencies to link in. You know, when I was a sports development officer, I almost felt like, well, why can't I be a sports development officer for the LGBT community? Or why can't, you know, there be a community development officer for the LGBT community? And I think it's important that we realise that we need to link into the services that are already there. We also need to look outside of Dublin, and I appreciate what you were saying as well, that sometimes we forget, you know, being gay just isn't in Capel Street or isn't in Dame Street. It's everywhere. And how do we get out to those people? How do we get into the areas that I work in particularly? I am quite obviously open and out in work, so for me, in the centre, you know, if there was anyone there like that came up and had an issue or wanted to set up an LGBT group, obviously I would have no issue, I'd be delighted. But I have to say, over the 11 years, I haven't really been approached that much. I felt I had to go and, you know, link certain LGBT groups into getting funding. So again, what I would say is just maybe not to isolate yourself in those areas. There is services there, and they just need to be utilised. I wanted to talk a bit about this community centre. The reason it will show kind of how we work in disadvantaged areas, how we work with young people. The steering committee, which came about, it was back in 2001, and there was a 1.1 million secured. I came on board in 2004. We spent about, you know, four years getting all the money together. We ended up getting 6.2 million, and we got the centre built. We also secured funding from the CDYSB, which is the City Dublin Youth Services Board, to give us money to help run this project. for me, you know, the funding, while capital funding is huge and it takes a long time to apply for capital funding, and sometimes it does actually depend on where the politicians are. So, you know, I found when I was working, I was lucky, I was in Dublin. There was a lot of money being pumped into Dublin. But, you know, maybe it's not the same in the country, that there mightn't be as much capital and resources. For example, with this project, we ended up applying again this year for money that we just didn't think we'd get. We got 160,000. We're going to build a gym. We're going to keep extending that centre. The money is there, but you just have to know how to find it. But you have to go and find it, and not just be thinking that, oh, it's for, you know, the disadvantaged drugs task force areas. I mean, LGBT people live in these areas, live in all areas. So we have to. That's my point. I think just look outside of, you know, the organisations we are in. Small funding, just to say really quickly, because I know I'm running out of time. The small funding, you could get €500. Okay, so I got €500 from an arts council, and what I did was I set up an arts group for women in the area. Now I wasn't sure if anyone would come, and it turns out now it's very successful. We've 20 women every Monday morning, and without fail they are there. We charge them €3 a class, and over a period of time it's already sustained itself. So they don't actually, we don't need to keep looking for funding. They're running it now themselves. Now they do have a base to run it from, but you know, I think that's key. It's whether it's small funding, it can make an impact. So again, you need to be looking at those areas where you can get that small amount of money, or large capital money, obviously, if you want to try and get something built. Again, I can give advice on this to anybody after this if they want to ask me about funding. Benefits to community. The projects we do and the centres that we build, I'm on my third centre, just to say. We've had Dominic Street, Cabra, Parkside and Ballybough. We have approximately about 8 or 10 community youth and sports centres throughout the city. Benefits to community, it creates better self-esteem, more confidence. People feel like they're actually part of something, and I think that's really key as well. The last thing, just before I show a small video, agencies pooling resources and working together. In the photograph, that's a boxing development officer, and he works on the ground with young people. He is funded by the Irish Boxing Association and Dublin City Council. He's been employed for 3 years, and I think his employment will continue with the amount of work he does on the ground with young people. He also does programs for adults within the areas. Again, I'm just trying to highlight sort of some of the services that are out there. Just to say thanks again, and anything that I've said or anything, if you need advice, that's no problem. So I'm just going to play this video. This video was put together down in the Ballybough Community Centre, and again, it's just to show how agencies work together and how it actually does work.